Hey, what is good everybody? Welcome back to another Untitled tutorial, and today we'll be going through how you at home can draw a skeleton character like the one here. Also, I'm just gonna let you guys know right now, I did record this live talking over as I drew, which I like because there's a lot more spontaneousness to it. But going through the footage, I found out the mic was not turned on. So now basically I'm going to be here talking over the video itself and explaining the process I'm going through, and who knows, it could be a blessing in disguise really, and maybe we'll end up with a better result. So anyway, waste more time and we'll just jump straight into it now. Okay, so the first thing I will be doing is I'm going to start off with the head shape. When I'm starting off with the head shape, I'm going to draw almost like a rectangle, so sort of like a squared off shape here. Depending on the base shape which you lay down first will have a massive factor on the final result of the skull. So basically, if you are drawing skull characters and you want them all to look different, start off with a different base shape and then start to build upon it. And once you do have that base shape, then we just want to draw this little cross hatch through the head, which is like a center line, and that just tells me the placement where I'm going to put the eyes and the nose and the mouth and all the other key features. And the first thing I'm starting off with is the right eye, and for that I'm just doing another small rectangle, and then I'm slowly keep loose lines around the eye. And the reason you want to keep the lines super loose whilst drawing is because it gives you more indication of lines your conscious mind wouldn't have thought of. Just by making, almost you could say, mistakes, some lines later on you can use to create something extra you might see, which if you go for something too precise, basically it can ruin the drawing and just be the same old as before because you get too comfortable with the lines you're used to putting in. Once the right eye is in place, I'm then going to go pick the placement of the left eye. This eye is obviously further away from the audience, but the same shapes are going to appear here. It's going to be a rectangle with a small circle, just a circle off the eye. I think for this character, I'm going to do it so he has eyeballs. You can draw your skulls with a hollow eyes the same way with real life, but because it's animation style, illustration, I'm just going to give it some eyes. So I'm just going to put the round circle in, loose lines around that eyeball. That's will give it an indication of cracks or bags under the eye. And once those two are in place, I get a good feel of the shape of everything, and I can move forward from there. Now for the bridge of the nose, I'm actually going to draw this real loose line connecting from the left to the right, almost in a rainbow shape going across. This is the bridge of the nose. There's a few key areas that cracks appear in the skull, and that is above the nose, and later on you will see on the right hand side of the skull. But once that's in place, now I've got an easier segue into the actual nose itself. So I just draw the bridge of the nose. It's just overlapping the left eye a tiny bit, obviously because it's more in the foreground. And then for the nose, it's just a triangle. I'm just putting a triangle in place, and that is the base shape. And basically, the whole drawing itself is built up on base shape. So like I said at the beginning, the first one is just a random shape I'm building on. So now after the eyes, it's like sculpting in a way. I'm hollowing out the eyes by using rectangles. Then for the nose itself, hollowing out the nose using a triangle. But once the basics are in place, I throw a few loose lines around, and it's just a great indication of where I'm putting things and lining up for my other parts of the drawing. Now for the left, I'm just going to draw a straight line, sort of hitting the base shape, so now it's connecting, and also to the right here. And what I'm aiming to do is pull it all forward. All the lines now are going to go in one flow direction, and that's going to be towards the teeth area. When I draw in this drawing here, I'm going to exaggerate it, so I'm really going to sort of, it's not anatomically correct, I'm just pulling it forward, I'm exaggerating that feature. And that's how you can break from realism. If some of you are used to drawing realism and want to escape into like more of a cartoony style, it's learning the base forms, so a realistic skull, and then you want to learn how to exaggerate shapes, and that's exactly what I'm doing here. I'm just pulling the line work forward with a small little tick shape, and I'm just making sure the whole skull now, yeah, is coming towards the mouth area. And when I'm going to work in the teeth, I keep my pencil real loose again, and I'm just putting in these tiny triangles for the teeth. But the pencil's doing most of the work here. I'm not aiming precisely like, okay, now this is a teeth, this is a tooth, this is another tooth. What I'm really aiming to do is just add a combination, so later on down the line I can see where I want to take things, build upon, if I want to change stuff, and so on. And for the left side of the face now, I'm looking to put this curved line. So from the base shape, as you see, I have this rectangle shape. I'm actually leaving that, but I'm pulling it back in. So the best way I can describe it is if you imagine a sculptor with a lump of clay. Like I said before, that's how it is. That's my bit of clay, and now I'm pushing into it. I'm molding it to how I want it. But this is where rarely you kind of want to keep it super loose. So nothing's definite, because this is something a lot of beginners, and even the beginner I struggled with, was I would work on the eye, but that had to be perfect. But the thing is, when you've got a perfect eye, it can make you super anxious to do it like freezes you, because you're like, that eye is perfect. I don't want to ruin, this is the best drawing, I don't want to ruin it now. And when you get in that state of mind, you suddenly freeze up and everything just falls apart. But by treating it just like everything is loose, just tell yourself, after this drawing, I'm going to do a better one anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But not caring as much, you end up with a real better result. So that's probably the biggest tip I could take for drawing, like a foundational skill. And the next is obviously building on the line structures and shading and more techniques. From the right eye here, I'm drawing the connective piece. So for this, it's just like a small bridge. Like you can basically use the eye as a guide to put a line up and then just sort of push it back. And this gives me a good way to put the top of the mouth bit straight back to the skull. And now this is the crack number 2 I was speaking about earlier. It's gonna come like a circle. It goes back in the skull and wraps itself back around into the other side of the skull. And now I've got it all in place, I get a better indication of where my baselines will be. So like the foundation shape I put in, I'm now building on that from the back of the skull, and just gives me a greater placement of where things will sit. And to humanize it, I'm just putting the eyebrows in place. These, if you don't want to hit the double line like I've done straight away, just draw a single line, just one line, and then you can thicken it out later. Eyebrows can change on the person or the way you want it to look. So if you want them super thick, just make sure the lines are thicker. If you want them super thin, thin the lines. But I always do the eyebrows where it sort of thins off towards the very end. And if you have done everything correctly and in order, you'll end up with something like this. It's good now just to have a minute or so just to make sure everything is in place and you're happy with it. Nothing's definite now, so if you want to make changes, it's definitely the right time to do so. And now if my mind is going, I'll tell you a bit of my mind process is I'm just weighing it all out, so making sure the weight is correct. The right eye is in place, is it too big, is it off center? Yeah, so I'm just making sure it's all in place. And now, because it's a character, I'm just going to show you more than just the base character, because if you want to leave it as a skull you could. So for this I'm just going to draw some glasses. And one of the key points is to draw the circle actually in front of the eye. A lot of people as a beginner mistake will draw a circle just around the eye. But if you push it and you squish the circles you're drawing, so they're more of an oval shape, it gives way more dimension and really pushes on the perspective. So yeah, I'm going to do both of that for the right and left eye. Just these small circles, but it just shows that the glasses are actually sat on the face and not pushed back on the face. And from here, obviously the skull has no ears, but I can still put the bracket of the glasses being pushed back so they sort of sit there. It's really, really effective if you are into like storytelling. This is where it gets a lot of fun as well. If you do character design and you want to tell stories or a narrative of a certain person or character, adding things like clothing, just like the real world, clothing, different aspects, can really help to tell that story and that person's background. So for this, I was thinking of Naz and putting the hat on place, or the skull. And for this, I drew like this half a cone. Imagine like a cone cut in half. That's the base shape. And now I'm just attaching that hat to the skull. And I'm just drawing two small curved lines. It's really simple. And the hat is almost falling off the head, but sat at an angle. Already it gives the character a lot more style, a lot more finesse, and something unique. Here I'm just hatching up real simple lines just for the pattern of the hat. And then it just comes to working in the more folds in the hat. And for that I'm just bringing lines in to the actual shape and adding a few little notches here and there at the very top, just to give it more of a dimension, and then set up a few bits of shading just as an indication of the folds. And when it comes to folds in clothing, a lot of the times it relies on the blocks of shading, using small triangles, certain squares, as well as just putting the lines in. But I'll explain to you more about that later on, about how you can do clothes for the sort of characters. But that will be pretty much the head solid there, the head of a character. And next up I'm going to start moving on to more of the body shape and things you can do to really make it look different from the norm. Now for the bottom of the jaw here, I'm just drawing another exaggerated line like we did with the top teeth, where we pulled it all forward to the front. For the very bottom, we're just exaggerating that further, and for the bottom of the jaw it's just a small rectangle, and the same process is repeated with the small triangles, keeping the pencil loose, just picking up different shapes till you finally get to a place you're happy with. This is entirely up to you. You can keep building. I don't like to draw my skulls with like a full set of teeth. I always like leaving a few like broken out, a bit smashed up. But that's actually personal preference. You could do it full set of teeth, and that's just adding more triangles. Also here, I was explaining the fact you don't even have to have the bottom jaw. I definitely like the skull when it hasn't got the bottom jaw, just like sat with the top. I don't know, it just kind of looks kind of cool. And now I'm just adding a cigarette on the end. I don't actually smoke, and I don't advise to smoke, or like I don't like to promote smoking. Like, the reason I use a cigarette in a lot of my drawings is because it enables me now to use this smoke effect. By adding the smoke effect, it just gives me access to add more of a background element behind, add a lot more shading. It just keeps a lot more loose lines added onto the sharper lines. It's just barely pushing that skull in the foreground here, keeping it super loose. Add that element of flow, which just comes real natural. And also I'm just adding the tongue. Like, don't try and think too much about if it's correct in the real world. The whole point of like character or illustration design is the fact you get to play around with more ideas that may not actually be realistic. That's definitely the funnest part of it. So yeah, I'm just drawing a guideline here of where I want a tongue to sit loosely from the mouth. Here was a line I put at the beginning, was like a real loose sketch line, and this is what I said to you at the beginning about having mistakes and how they can come in handy later on. Because I like the line so much, it's now given me the idea to add like hoodie clothing to it, which obviously suits the glasses and the hat. So here I'm following that line through and just adding this hood. It almost frames the head as well. So this is I can't keep stressing enough, is to keep it loose and really sketch in the lines loose, like lightly. Don't commit to anything just yet, because you don't know if you want to change it, or a sudden idea might come halfway through your drawing and it might just come out of nowhere, and it could be a super good idea, and you just take that, run with it, and before you knew it, you just produced something out of this world, and that's totally unique to you. For the body itself, I'm drawing this first line. It's like the spine line. That gives me the flow element. Keep that loose, and it's actually bent at a sort of angle. And then from there, I'm just adding the top half of the body, the chest area. and adding a few indications of where the hoodie's gonna fall. But yeah, I'm super happy with how the hoodie actually sat. Like I said, it's framing the skull so well, so well. And that will basically be like the top half of the skeleton character here. All lines are loose. Nothing was committed, nothing was planned with this. It's just a build-up of shapes. And I've said in previous ones before, sometimes you have days where you don't really know what you want to draw, and sometimes just getting your sketchbook out, drawing a few shapes, building on that, you create something you didn't even knew you were going to create. And skulls is definitely a character for me that I like to draw when I don't know what to draw. Before I start adding more to the body, as I'm sure a lot of you know already with my characters, it's always about the hands and the head. I'm going to draw the hands first, and for that I'm just going to draw these rectangle shapes just to put the base down. If you want more in-depth tutorial on hands, there is one on my channel, and there's also one on skulls, so that's two separate ones, so I'll just focus on the objects themselves. But for now I want to actually show you how to put the whole combination together. It's kind of like someone who teaches piano, they can teach you what each key means, but this tutorial here is more of how to piece it all together to come to a final result. So yeah, the hands are going to come down first in the foreground, and then later on what I'm going to do is connect the hand to the body. But first the hands are in the foreground, and it's also something that gives a lot of expression to the character. So I always like to make sure it's in place. And I'm really going to graffiti this out. So here I'm drawing a spray can. I'm putting the spray can in before I draw the fingers, just because then I can actually have the fingers holding it, way more realistic. And I'm also pushing on dimension here, where I'm making it thinner towards the back. And for the fingers, I'm just doing these small tube shapes. I'm doing 3 for each finger, and I'm working around the can here. Loose shapes, I'm not trying to go for the detail. So that's 1, and it connects to a small circle. And then that's going to be 2, and then 3 for the top of the spray can where he'd be spraying the nozzle. And for the other fingers, I'm going to have the second finger sort of bent. I really like to have my fingers like jagged up differently. It just sort of adds more like, I don't know, more creepiness to it, I suppose. So the second one I'm drawing here is just going to be 1 tube shape. And for the third, I'm going to have it pulled out again, like really long, really spidery. So another 3 tube shapes, but just pulling out forward. And then for the fourth and the actual final finger, I'm just going to have it more in the background, wrapping around the can. So he's holding it like he's not holding it as you would normally, he's more holding it if you was to hold it with a lot of exaggeration, a lot more of an extra expression than just holding the spray can. And once all the fingers, and I'm just going to pick this small triangle for the thumb. It's in the background, so it's not going to be so much in your face. And just like the smoke, the spray can itself can have another sort of textured effect, and that is just to have it spraying downwards right now, which then later gave me the thought that it'd be so cool to have the actual spray can painting in a letter itself. So later on I actually end up painting a letter on the bottom half of this drawing, which wasn't planned, it just came naturally because the drawing took its own direction. Sometimes the artist, well for me the artist, as an artist, I like to think I have full control over what I'm creating, and to be honest with you, if I feel that way, I don't create much that's actually that good. But if I just let the pencil do most of the work and I'm just pushing it around, you just create these cool things. Like there's no plan to this drawing today. I'm trying to almost like teach you the fact is like, yeah, there's technique to stuff, but the bigger one at home is just to start and just keep going with what feels right and it comes out. Because we're going for the real graffiti-esque look, the backhand I'm going to have holding a roller, and once again the fingers are just built up of tube shapes, and I'm just wrapping the hand going over the bar. but the pinky finger, I really want to exaggerate. I do this a lot as well with the pinky. Have it like the pinky's out, like the pinky ring. I just think it adds more to it. Just adds that little bit extra. Because a lot of people can draw a hand holding something, but just have the pinky out or something like it's in mid movement. I just think it's really cool, and that's just a stylistic choice. For the bar, I'm just going to draw 2 lines like running next to each other and coming towards the back. Now this was actually quite an interesting thing that came up with this drawing. With the roller, I think I put a mistake line in, and it actually made it look like it was like a face. So I played up on the idea. And had the back roller as like its own little character, just by putting a smiley face on it, like a little emoji. And to me, like those little subtleties, I know a lot of people appreciate. Like you see all the time. I think there's a guy called Doodles and Drips. He's a sick artist, really, really good. But he'll do things like some messed up little Hello Kitty badge on, I don't know, a keyring or something, and it just adds to it. And the same principle is going here. There's a little face in the back, and I love that sort of thing. I love that, and it adds to the whole feel of it. You got this cute little marshmallow roller face next to this decrepit, smoking, hip-hop styled skull. The contrast, that's what I'm saying. It's created its own world. And just drawing aside, this is probably one of the biggest takeaways I can give. Is just first is creating the story of the character, and then creating your own world. That's important to me. You want the person to see it and be like entranced into this other world that's outside of this reality. And keep it authentic to yourself, because your reality is different to mine. You might be someone who's really into rock music per se, and being able to express that world that's inside your mind on paper is a gift that I think many people would love to have and appreciate. And if you can cultivate that and harness that just by going with your authentic movements, definitely move towards that. And this is where I like not to say this isn't exactly how to draw something. I'm just giving you indications on how maybe you may improve a few things. But at the end of the day, if you are able to translate your world onto paper, you have your own gifts to offer this world. So sometimes following what I'm doing isn't always the correct thing to do, stylized, because this is my world, but lean towards your own world. So now it's all in place. Now I'm looking to connect the hands. The right hand here, I just like the forearm coming down. Oh, and here on the left, I was trying to explain that some people would just connect to the body straight like that, when there's so much more you can do here, but actually angling away from the body first, and then from those first lines, wrap it back into the body. Keep the pencil loose and tick it quick, so go slow with the line and pull it in close. That gives it a lot more of a dramatic feel to it, and just looks way better. So here, like, the hand's coming from the head, higher than it actually should be if it was actually correct, but it gives it more of like a shape where you're seeing it right now. Where I think I remember as a beginner, I just wanted to get the body connected to the hand ASAP. Like, I've secured it down. I used to be quite like an anxious drawer, I suppose, so I'll try and connect it to be safe. Like, oh yeah, now it looks good still. It looks good, tight. But now I've realised maybe sometimes it's best to push away and then pull it back in. Here I'm just adding the lace, a few extra things. Like if you're drawing this, you might think I want a chain on this. You could draw this at home and completely have your own version and claim, hey, this is mine. Put your logo on the t-shirts. If you have your own brand, you could draw a skull character, brand it up, have your brand on the hat, put your brand on the shirt. There's so much you can actually do here. It's quite incredible. But yeah, now the jumper, I'm just adding these lines to indicate where the body's actually going to sit fully. So I'm just building up from the top of the chest and then pulling it down on the other side. And that's just a simple line. I'm trying to draw the body proportions as well, a little bit smaller than the head, just keep that animated look instead of drawing it too long. And then I'm just working on the top of the clothes. For the folds, I'm just doing these little triangles that aren't closed off, cutting into the shoulder. I'm having it so it's sort of rolled up, that way I can explain more about the clothing. So yeah, I'm just trying to cut in, but I'm not connecting the lines. And I keep building up on these triangle shapes. Keep building. Here I do this little rectangle, pulling the lines back into the shape, but not too many. You want less is kind of more, but not too little, because it's a shading that's really going to kick off the clothing and add more of a dimension. And here by just doing small shading, like small triangles and more small rectangles, I'm able to create more of the illusion of folds. And it's just building on the top here, building down, and just keep adding the lines, darkening up. But a lot of people would put way too many lines because they're just putting lines everywhere to make the folds a reality, when shading is definitely the one that's going to pull you through to the end. And then from there I just connect in the arm. There's the safe spot now. I've connected the arm, and then yeah, now it's almost like people think you've done the body first, where no, hands first, then build up to the body. And then it's just adding the back here, building up on the shape, just finding the place where I'm happy, the position of everything. I always like the sort of bend in the body. I think it looks super cool. And then just finishing off the jumper by putting the bottom of it in place, which would then later on move towards the leg. But because the spray can then got itself in place, a letter is definitely gonna go there. Well, it does go there. And just like before, when you finish the face, it's the perfect time to go over the whole image and see what parts you want to keep and what parts you want to take out. Here I'm just rubbing out the back. I end up going for like a more of a straight down then curve sort of look, so it sort of follows that line, comes straight down and wraps downwards into the body. Here I'm just adding the backpack. I'm just playing with the whole graffiti theme right now. It could be out on like a night mission, going out painting stuff. And I'm just trying to convey that right now through the picture itself. Okay guys, basically what I've done is just put the letter in place there. There's a few letter tutorials on my actual main channel too, so check them out if you need that to be fulfilled within yourself. A bit of a background element here which is boxed off. Really rough sketch. Like I said, you want to see a sketch, because now we tighten it all in. And to tighten it in, you're going to need to grab yourself a darker pencil. Well, to be honest, I'm using a HB, but now I'm just going to go in with a lot more confidence. And I'm picking out the bits I want to keep, and not picking out the bits I don't want to keep, and it is that simple. So I'm gonna time lapse this. I'm just gonna go over it, starting from the top to the bottom, blacken it all out, and whilst I'm going, I'm just gonna add small indication blocks of shading. So if I was to paint this, I have an indication of where I would want colours to go from dark to light. So yeah, what I'm gonna do is just time lapse it all. You see the process of what will be happening. But that is the fundamentals on how you can draw skull characters. If you want to know how to draw skulls, like I'm gonna keep saying on my channel, there's a tutorial on that. If you want hands, there's one on that. If you want one letters, there's one on that. If you need more help piecing it together. But if you want to know how to piece it together, this is a tutorial for you and the lesson. And this is one of my greatest characters and things to draw is skulls. If I'm ever stuck for things to draw, I just say to myself, draw a skull character, just to keep the engines running. Okay guys and girls, that is how you at home can draw yourself skeleton type characters. I've just gone through this, blacked out all the lines I want to keep and shaded a few things in. Obviously it's still quite rough in areas. I just really want to show you the basic principles so you can break down a character for yourself at home. As always, I want to say thank you to everyone who's been watching, tuning into the tutorials. A massive thank you to everybody on the team over at the Patreon. You guys are enabling me to create and share these tutorials, so thank you so much. Together we got this. And as always, I hope you stay well, stay blessed, and keep creating. Peace.